into history.
Together, we'll explore 18th century life and connect it to present-day experience.
Welcome to Consider the Sources, Historic Interiors and Collections Care. I'm Linda Rendolfe. Today we are live from the Benjamin Powell House to talk about how Colonial Williamsburg safeguards the buildings, the objects in them, with a team of very dedicated individuals. We'll get to your questions soon, so please post them in the comments. Before we do that, let's introduce our team of Senior Historic Interiors technicians. With us are Patrina Copes, Olivia Baskel, and Jennifer Thornton. The Colonial Williamsburg Preventative Conservation Department is one of the very earliest to be organized in the United States. So please tell us when that was and what prompted the department's creation.
Well, preventative conservation has been around, in concept for a while, but the field didn't exist at Colonial Williamsburg until 1986. We've always cared for the spaces and cleaned them, but the custodial staff never worked directly with the conservation staff, and so preventative conservation started. They noticed that things were being probably too harshly cleaned. They might have used harsh chemicals, just careless accidents were happening. And so conservation sort of came in and they policed the chemicals that were used and the supplies and things that were in the buildings and how the stuff was treated. And
It takes quite a team, I would imagine, to keep track of all the buildings. How many people are on the staff that take care of them?
There are 14.
Excellent. All right. Well, thank you for that little bit of background. Now let's take a moment to find out what the preservation conservation includes.
The goal of preventive conservation is to mitigate any damage or degradation to our collections that can be caused by dust, pests, light, humidity, and physical damage. For us, this mainly takes place in the historic area exhibition buildings where we clean and prepare for potential emergencies. We also monitor and report conditions of the environment, collections, and building integrity. We want to prevent the need for reactive conservation in the future.
HICC, Historic Interiors and Collections Care, is the largest group in conservation with a staff of 13. We care for over 80 buildings, which include the main houses and their outbuildings. These are either original buildings or have collections in them. We begin our day at 6 a.m. every morning, 365 days a year. We start by checking messages for anything that might have been reported in the evening. Then we head out to our assigned buildings. At 6 in the morning, it's still dark, and a lot of the buildings don't have modern lights. So before any work can get done, we have to pull out lights and open blinds and shutters. While in the buildings, we are responsible for all of the cleaning of both objects and the public areas that guests walk through. We also do general inspections of the sites to check for any problems like leaking pipes or replacing burnt out light bulbs in our chandeliers, and generally checking the structure of the building. Dust and debris are a constant battle. The daily traffic in our buildings means dust and dirt accumulate on floors, walls, and object surfaces. It's our job to fight the influx of this dust and debris for presentation as well as conservation purposes. Beyond altering an object's appearance, dust can attract moisture, cause chemical changes, and cause damage over time. Excessive buildup of dust also attracts damaging pests. Pests are inevitable in historic buildings. They love to eat fibers and fabrics. They leave harmful residue and waste on surfaces and even attract other pests.
Over the years, we've had an issue with carpet beetles. We've also had issues with mice every now and then, and we have set up traps for those. We also have issues with ladybugs and stink bugs. When it comes to stink bugs and ladybugs, we are directed to basically take them out of the building the best way possible, avoid any crushing or stomping to create any smells in the building. So it's best to just take them out either with a cup or a napkin and just release them outside.
We use sticky traps to monitor what types of pests are in our spaces. We also must examine collections objects routinely. To prevent damage, we remove trash and food daily, clean, and turn to our IPM specialist, Joel Voron, to help mitigate pest issues.
The first thing we do when we see pests, we immediately document it. We take pictures, we send it off to Joel Voron, and he'll immediately come over and assess the situation. He will probably set up traps or some kind of way to prevent this from becoming an issue in the long run.
Light, temperature, and humidity also pose threats to collections materials. Light can cause fading to many materials, especially textiles, leather, and wood. To combat harmful effects of sunlight, we have a film on most of our historic area exterior windows that filters out UV light. We also keep shutters and blinds closed as much as possible. Light also creates excess heat in buildings, which can become an issue. While temperature can be a problem, what we're mostly concerned about in our climate is humidity. Humidity encourages mold growth, causes rapid warping of wood, and other damage to materials, especially composite objects. As we mainly work in historic buildings, this can be a struggle because the buildings are not built with HVAC systems in mind. There are some things that we can do, like place fans in spaces that need extra airflow or that just need to be dried out, and that works pretty well. But mainly, we monitor trends and issues in our sites with environmental loggers and share concerns with our facilities maintenance colleagues. We work with them to find a happy medium between the needs of our collections, sustainability, and just the capabilities of the systems that we currently have in place.
Welcome back. Patrina, Olivia, and Jennifer are ready to answer your questions, so please post them in the comments. Let's get started with a question from our audience. They would like to know, how do you keep track of all of the buildings?
Well, technicians are assigned different buildings. That way we get to know them pretty well and we get to know their quirks and basically how often they might get dusty and dirty, and then we can address it however often we need to. And we also have check sheets in all of our buildings that let us know exactly what needs to be done every day or once every week maybe, and they get updated periodically if we see something else that needs to be addressed.
I would imagine there are seasonal tasks as well.
Yes, and those things we keep track of on a bigger calendar basically, and we have reoccurrences that let us know when things are coming up so we can prepare for them and just so we know what's coming up.
Excellent. All right, another viewer would like to know, what kind of tools are used in your work?
We use HEPA vacuums. We use soft bristle brushes for dusting, and we use microfiber cloths for the silverware, because you cannot dust silverware with just anything.
Exactly. I would imagine that with the objects that you're working with, a delicate touch is critical.
Yes, you have to be careful. You have to make sure you're holding everything properly. You're not just dusting like you're dusting in your house where you could just move things with one hand. You have to move things with both hands. There's definitely techniques for cleaning within a historic building.
Fascinating. So what kind of training is there for working in preventive conservation?
Right now there's not any particular training. There is a program.
At Winter, there's a program there. It is the first in the United States to actually have a program for preventive conservation. When we're hiring, we're looking for someone doesn't necessarily have a background in it, since it only just existed a few years ago. Someone who has a lot of hand skills, can do very delicate work, can also do a lot of physical work, because we're doing a lot of cleaning. We're going up stairs and things like that, so we got to be pretty fit too.
Yeah. And I would imagine there's a broad range of skill sets that come into play in your work.
Yeah, we all have a lot of hand skills. We're really good at learning new things, fixing furniture, making food, just being able to do a lot of different tasks.
Yeah, because you're doing everything from painting.
Yes,
to
we do everything.
cleaning.
Yeah.
Yeah. All right. A big variety of things.
Right.
So another viewer would like to know, what is the handoff from your time in the building to the daytime or evening staff?
So we come in at 6 o'clock in the morning and we have exactly 3 hours before the doors open. So we have all that time to do our scheduled cleaning and then fixing any problems that might arise. So we have to be on our game every morning.
And I would imagine communication is probably also really important, because if you notice something in the morning, that's got to get relayed to the other
Right.
teams, correct?
Right. And also, yes, we like to keep the interpreters and let them know if something happened in the morning or the night before, so that everybody's on the same page and knows, what's going on if there's anything unusual.
All right. So another viewer would like to know, do you provide training for other staff for handling the building interiors?
The other staff, they do get
Yeah.
training
So-
opportunities.
Yeah, I mean, we do start out mostly just by, I think learning the buildings is the hardest part, like knowing where they are. But in the buildings, we do a lot of just specific training, and even the stuff we do in the labs, we like to tend to see, what people are good at, and if they're good at painting, then we might put them at fake food. Katrina, she was probably the best box maker we've ever had. And so definitely when she started doing that, like it was, you make great boxes.
Call me the box lady.
Yeah. So Samuel would like to know, how do you provide proper humidity levels? How do you control those in high traffic rooms and buildings?
Yeah, so some buildings, especially because there are tours going on, doors are opening a lot, and so the interpreters, they really stay on top of that. They make sure doors are shut during the, after everyone has come in, they shut the doors immediately. That tends to be our biggest issue as far as, especially summertime. Here in Virginia, we get a wide range of temperatures. So in the summertime, it's very hot, very humid. In the winter, it can be very dry, cold. So we really utilize them and training with them to make sure that they're keeping the environment safe. And HVAC systems, they do have modern systems in them. So we're keeping track of that, and we've got logging devices. So we will take measurements to make sure that they're still running good.
So you're not only dealing with extreme high temperatures and humidity in the summer, but you also have the potential for ice and cold and snow in the winter.
Right. And these houses weren't meant to be opened up left and right all day long. They weren't built with HVAC systems in mind, so it's a lot of compromise and adjusting.
Very interesting. All right, another viewer would like to discuss how the unvarnished pine floors are maintained, and what kind of cleaning supplies do you use to keep those up?
We vacuum.
That's
we
the
have
main thing.
we have vacuums, and the head of the vacuum doesn't have the rotating bristles, because that will damage not only the floors but also the carpets. So we have to be gentle with that. And otherwise, every once in a while, we steam clean the floors when we do get a chance, because the buildings are open 365 days a year, and so there's only a certain amount of times when we can do like a deep cleaning.
And that's a lot of guest
Yeah,
traffic.
so we don't use any products or anything on the floors.
Yeah, only water.
Right.
Only water. All right. Ariel would like to know, what has been the most difficult or fragile object you've worked with? Or an example of one.
I mean, sometimes we'll get pieces that have been repaired. So at Bassett Hall, there's a small little glass, I don't think it's like maybe like a little candy jar or something, and it in particular had cracked at one point all the way across of it. And so if that failed at any point and I tried to just take the lid off, it could break in two. So that's something, you have to be mindful of what you're doing, and even knowing the history, the back story of the object, just so you know what repairs might cause an issue.
All right, thank you. Well, another viewer would like to know, do you work on anything outside of the buildings?
We are responsible strictly for inside the buildings, but that also includes the structure itself. So we are kind of like the eyes, ears, and noses of the foundation, but we care for the architectural elements in the building, and because we see them every day, we know when something's not right, and we can report that to the curators and conservators and archaeological, what are they called? Architectural preservation. Yeah.
Yeah. All right. There's a lot to keep track of,
Yes.
no doubt. All right. Okay, here's an interesting question.
Oh, no.
Have you ever encountered a ghost in your work?
I've had experiences. I've been at the Tucker before, 6 o'clock in the morning. It's very dark in there, and I went in and I swore somebody was already in the building, and we're supposed to call safety and security when we enter a building for the first time, and I didn't call them because I swore somebody was there.
You could hear steps?
I heard steps upstairs, and I swore somebody was there. And security came, and the lady that opens the building after me, she came, and he said, "You didn't call in?" And I said, "But somebody's already here." And she went upstairs to check, and there was nobody there.
Never a dull moment.
Right.
All right. Well, let's take a moment now to learn more about the work the Historic Interiors staff does. And remember, please continue to post your questions and comments.
We focus on the objects in the buildings, but we also focus on the buildings because they are a part of our collections. This allows us to work with a lot of different groups like architectural preservation and research, facilities maintenance, and the historic area programming. They are able to report a lot of the different things that happen in the building, like power outages, any leaks or maintenance mechanical problems. So it really helps us do our job better.
We work with architectural preservation a lot. Amanda Keller, she works with us to know what we can put in the buildings and what we can take out of the buildings. And if there's some damage to reproductions, we can ask her and she can replace them for us.
Our buildings are on a rotating schedule. They close once a year, sometimes once every other year. They'll be closed for either a week or 2 weeks. During that time, we're able to work on any special maintenance projects that happen, any special cleaning things. It gives us an opportunity to do really good deep cleaning and even paint out spaces. At the With, we were able to paint out the laundry. The whitewash was failing on it, so our journeyman painters were able to go in, scrape everything down, repaint it, and make it look brand new again. The seasonal changes happen twice a year. In the warmer months, we will remove all of the winter things like wool blankets and coal and fire in the fireplaces. And in the wintertime is when we put all of those things back. We like to interpret the seasons in the buildings, which is why we have to change them out. And it just helps bring the season to the building. During closings, we also get an opportunity to do a lot of deep cleaning. So we will remove furniture away from walls. We set up scaffolding in some of the buildings to get high reach places. We will deep clean carpets. Anything that we can't normally get to because we don't have the time in the morning to set up that type of equipment. And it's a really good opportunity to get rid of all the nasty pest food. Recently at the Randolph Kitchen and Enslaved Quarters, while it was closed, we were able to do a nice deep clean in there. One of our aides, Earl Taswell, was able to steam clean our reproduction wood flooring, and it was able to remove years of just dirt and grime.
Another important part of our job is to monitor special events and media shoots in our historic buildings and any building with collections in it. Whether it is a group renting a space for a special event, an outside crew filming a movie or TV show, or our own in-house productions and photo shoots, we need to be there to safeguard our buildings and the objects within them. We would be the ones to rearrange a space as needed and move objects safely, and to make sure nobody puts a water bottle on a 200-year-old harpsichord.
We are also responsible for emergency preparation and collection spaces. One of the big emergencies we've had lately has been hurricane season, moving a lot of collections and furniture out of the buildings so that we can make sure that they don't get damaged. It entailed us having to get all of the conservation team together to come up with a step-by-step emergency plan for what to do when we get excessive rain or severe weather. We work with facilities maintenance to distribute and install emergency supplies like absorbent snakes, sandbags, and window coverings. I order a lot of the supplies for our department, and we use the sandbags when we have a lot of leaks, a lot of rain, and we distribute them to the building to make sure that nothing gets damaged in the process. After severe weather passes, we check our buildings and perform collections triage and document any issues.
That was a fascinating look into what it takes to take care for the buildings and furnishings that our guests see during their visits. We have more audience questions for you, but first let's talk a little bit more about how many buildings there are in the historic area that you take care of.
We care for over 80 buildings in the historic area, and it's not just the main houses. It's also outbuildings like kitchens or lumber houses or dairies, laundries. We care for buildings that are either original or that have collections in them. It's always a lot of
buildings.
And I would imagine each building is almost like its own personality,
Yes.
correct? Because one part of the historic area might be in shade, another building might be in full sun. Can you talk a little bit more about that?
Yeah, so in the buildings, especially you mentioned sun, so all of the windows have a UV film on them, but they also have blinds and things like that, and so interpreters throughout the day, they'll adjust the blinds to make sure the light isn't shining directly on an object. Especially, outbuildings, we might check those, for trash. Also, a lot of bugs, spiders, spider webs. So that's a big thing.
All right.
Yeah.
Well, one of our viewers, KD, wants to know about, and this goes to what you were saying, the unsung army that cleans and assesses the palace and the armory kitchens.
So the palace is actually my building. I share it with another technician, Lisa Ashby, and you almost need two people. That is a very huge complex, and it has a lot of collections in it. And the kitchens, we go in those. A lot of the outbuildings there too, we have leaf blowers that we'll use to blow out the carriages, the carriage houses, and
They kind of require different things because a lot of the outbuildings, they're not controlled by HVAC systems, so they're often, the doors are just left open, so you get a lot of leaves and bugs and things that go in there every day, so it takes kind of a different kind of cleaning every day.
So you're dealing with a variety of conditions.
Yes.
All righty. Well, what do you find is the biggest challenge in keeping the buildings and the objects safe?
People. People are the biggest challenge. These buildings were not meant to have people walking through them all day long and having the doors open. And though we love to share the history, and we will continue to share the history with the world, it is us inside the buildings.
Yeah, because we forget sometimes how much heat and moisture our own bodies will produce.
Right, and the things we bring in off of our shoes. Yes.
Yeah. All righty. So what would you say is the one biggest challenge of those that you have to deal with caused by people?
gum.
Yeah?
We get a lot of gum. We have found gum in so many
Under
every
chairs,
place you can
on
imagine.
walls. You would be amazed at the places that we find gum.
Yeah.
And then all the treads on people's shoes these days bring in bigger and bigger rocks into the place. It's amazing.
Well, I'm old enough to remember when you weren't allowed to chew gum in schools, and I guess there was a reason for that. All right. So how often do you take inventory in each of the buildings?
Pretty much every time we're in there, we're checking everything, aren't we?
Yeah, and we do. I mean, so there is an official inventory, and the registrars will usually take care of that. But we're definitely there to make sure that, I will notice if someone moves something on a table. There have been times when they've come in and say maybe do a change, or the curator might have come in and sort of moved where something was. And if she doesn't tell me, I always email her, because I just want to make sure that she's the one that moved stuff. So we notice when things aren't there.
Or out of place.
Yeah.
That's why it helps that each tech has their own set of buildings, so they get to know it really well.
Absolutely. All righty. Well, we'll continue with viewer questions in a few moments. But first, let's learn more about the work that is done in the preventive lab and what other skills our Historic Interiors staff possesses. Please continue to send your questions for our final Q&A period after this video.
Once our exhibition buildings are open for the day, our aides clean any original buildings that are used as staff offices, while techs primarily work in the Bruton Heights Collections Building in the Preventive Conservation Lab. In our team, we must be the Jack and Jills of all trades as our jobs change from day to day. A few of our responsibilities are to create safe, long-term storage solutions for our collections, make faux food and props for the historic area exhibition sites and the museum, repair reproduction furniture, and even repair and create floor cloths. Proper long-term storage solutions are important for keeping collections objects safe, securing them from movement, consolidating objects with multiple parts, and safeguarding them from environmental elements. For example, corrosion intercept film is used to line boxes to protect metal objects from corrosive and oxidative gases. Creative enclosures can also save space in storage areas with limited real estate. Some boxes are built to allow fragile objects and their parts to be seen and examined without the need for lots of handling. We also make storage boxes for exhibition props when they're not in use, such as a recent project to consolidate mannequin parts for the textiles lab.
To help interpret the 18th century and to make the buildings look more like someone has lived in them, we need to provide props for them, like fake food, the coal that goes in the fireplaces. We have to make all of that stuff because you can't put real food in an exhibit building because that's just going to attract the pests. So we produce all of that here in the lab. We worked with the historic farmers and foodways, and they provide us with vegetables that we can recreate and with cooked food and dishes that we can recreate. What we usually do is they decide what kind of settings they want to put out on a table, and then we will get the food from them, we'll photograph it, and then I start the process of recreating it. Sometimes that means molding it, and sometimes that means just making it out of scratch or whatever I can carve from. All of the materials that we use to recreate the food has been tested to make sure that it's not going to off-gas or harm the objects in any way. We're also concerned about weight, so we've been trying out different methods throughout the years. We used to use a lot of plaster when we were recreating things from molds, but that's very heavy and not great to put in antiques. So if it's something we're putting outside in say a kitchen, it might be a vegetable, and it's fine to make it out of something that heavy. But in the buildings where the antiques are and they're being set on plates, they need to be made out of things that are a lot lighter, like ethafoam.
Our team also has to care for the reproduction floor cloths throughout the historic area, which were originally created by some amazing outside vendors. We recently had the opportunity to design and create our own reproduction floor cloth for the Tucker House based on the 18th century Carwitham designs. That project was such a success, it led to us creating an even larger floor cloth that you can see on display at the King's Arms Tavern.
We also assist other conservators in their labs by performing conservation work like cleaning and labeling collections in the objects lab, assisting with non-invasive techniques in the upholstery lab, cleaning, gilding, and performing minor repairs for the furniture lab, and sometimes we even do repairs on objects in place in the historic area. We also clean and repair maps and create phase boxes for books in the paper lab and help clean storage areas throughout the collections building.
What a variety of talents our Historic Interiors staff have. Very impressive. So please continue to post your questions for Patrina, Olivia, and Jennifer as we ask for more viewer questions. Dave would like to know, do you have an emergency plan in place in case of extreme weather events? And how often do you have extreme weather events here in Colonial Williamsburg?
Yes, we do have an emergency plan in place. I'd say for the last couple of years, we've been the ones to update this specific historic area plan, and we have basically a step-by-step guide of what to do in each building when we get severe weather, which happens, I'd say if it's super severe, maybe once a year in the fall-ish time in Virginia. And yeah, so we have step-by-step of what exactly we need to do, like maybe cover something or place absorbent snakes in certain windows that we know get leaks or fireplaces, things like that. And then every year, if a severe weather has passed, we go out and check our buildings after the storm, and then we'll update our emergency plan with anything new that's happened that we know we need to address the next time.
Now, you mentioned snakes. Could you explain what those are?
Yes, snakes, well, they're absorbent snakes, and they're long cylindrical tubes kind of filled with corn husk debris, and they just are extremely absorbent, and they help us prevent really bad leaks and water from spreading.
All right. Well, Susie is asking, how does your department deal with the private buildings? And can you explain what the private buildings are?
So private buildings, there are some that are residences, so some people live in the historic area. There's also office buildings that we take care of. So the office buildings that we take care of are original structures. So one of the things, we've got specific rules, so you can't have like plants or food laying out, everything must be contained. So we do that in the historic area exhibit buildings as well. But it can be a challenge, especially with some of the offices, because I mean, I hate telling people they can't have a plant on their desk, but it can attract pests.
Mm-hmm. All right. Well, Ariel is asking, besides finding gum, which we talked about, have you ever had to deal with a guest accidentally breaking or ruining a structure or a piece of furniture?
I don't know about guests, but
Well, I mean,
reproduction things.
reproductions usually, because all of our antiques are at least contained behind barriers, so they can't get that close to them. But our job is also to take care of biohazard. So if a little kid gets sick in the building, which does sometimes happen around reproductions.
Yes.
But I don't think any of them damaged. Not really. We try not to let them get that close.
All right, you're on guard.
Yes.
All right. Julie would like to know, do you have any faux food making workshops or recommendations for where someone could learn how to do that?
Currently, we don't have any workshops, but I would say that I learned a lot of it from YouTube. Just any sort of like model making or anything like that I've looked up to tutorials for, and that's basically how I learned a lot of it. Because I'm also molding a lot of things, and there are so many videos of people just to teach you how to just make a silicone mold. Yeah.
And I would imagine that that's a skill set that once you learn some of the secrets, you share them with your colleagues. Because some of those items look so real that some people may not be aware that that's fake food. It's not the real item sitting there. So how do you learn how to get the color and the details in something like a cabbage?
So because we get our food from foodways and the historic farmers, we get to see the actual objects themselves. We will document them, taking photos, measurements, and I will use those photos as a reference when I'm painting. And I've learned a lot of skills from other people. Derek Brooks, he's an artist, and he worked with us for a little while, and I learned a lot of painting techniques from him. His food's amazing. I still know. I can pick out his stuff. It's so good.
We know Derek's work.
Yeah.
We see it.
It's very good.
Alrighty. One viewer would like to know what kind of things, suggestions do you have to help guests know how to avoid doing any damage to the buildings and objects?
It's hard to be aware of your surroundings, especially when you're walking in with a whole bunch of other people. But just
Don't
being
touch.
aware. Yeah,
And
don't touch
be
anything.
aware of your surroundings.
Yeah.
And there are the interpreters. They do start out their tours, and they'll remind people to say spit out gum and not have any drinks in the buildings. So that is one of the biggest, I think, barriers for helping that stuff.
All right. So Susie would like to know, do you work with food services when you plan the design of the faux food?
the curators, so once they've sort of decided what they want to interpret, so if it's a specific event that has happened, sometimes it may just be, oh, we want to have a fancy dinner, or this is a dessert scene. And once they figured out what they want to see, that's when we go through because we have a storage collection full of things that we've made throughout the years. So if we don't have something that they want to interpret it, we might go to Foodways and they can cook it. When we did a wedding scene a few years ago, we had never done a cake. So we had them produce a 18th century, from an 18th century recipe, a cake, and we photographed it and I made it. So it's really great having all of those different departments here, because I don't know what we would do if we didn't have them to reproduce this stuff for us.
So that's a lot of different skill sets that you've mentioned. What additional skills have each of you developed on the job?
It's really like being in arts and crafts. Like in the morning we're cleaning, and in the afternoon we're arts and crafts. It's like we've learned woodworking skills, working with the furniture department with all their wonderful tools, and I've learned how to make boxes for all kinds of things. And what else have we done? We've made the floor cloths. I've never made a floor cloth before until I came here, and now I can add that to my resume. It's wonderful, the things that we've learned since we've been here.
I've personally done a lot more reproduction furniture repair than before, and that's been really great, getting to learn tips and tricks on how to fix furniture in an appropriate way. I've also helped out in the upholstery lab. I've learned a lot about making non-intrusive systems, or non-intrusive upholstery systems. So I help Leroy Graves upholster chairs and couches and sofas in a way that's not harmful to the original frame, and he's a great teacher.
Awesome.
Yeah, one of the things that I worked on, one of my favorite projects was it was with Leroy, and I made a reproduction chandelier tassel, so it's very large. It's on display at the Palace, and it was not something I ever thought that I'd make, but it was really fun.
All right. Well, Ariel would like to know, have you ever had any persistent pests or wildlife in any of the buildings? And if so, how did you deal with that?
That's what I said when I said we are the eyes, ears, and noses of the foundation. Because, yes, I think each of us have probably walked into a building in the morning and we just know there's some
Something's
demise
not right.
critter, down in the basement or something.
Yeah,
and that's when
just
we call
this
Joel.
week, I was showing a new employee around, and I walked down into a cellar, so it's a space that is currently closed, and so we only check it every once in a while, and it smelled really bad, and so that's when I went around looking for all the traps that we already have set, because it's a cellar, things like that, your pests are going to come in. So we have traps out, and so once I discovered it, I then called Joel, and he came out and removed the trap and the smell with it.
Yeah. So you have a lot to contend with, birds and bugs and all of those invaders who are constantly testing you. All right, so tell us a little bit more about what it's like to work with film or photo crews who come to Colonial Williamsburg.
Well, it's really fun to be on the other side of the camera, not in front of it, but it's fascinating to watch the film crews. We have our own in-house productions, and we have exterior people that come to do media shoots. It could be a film shoot or a photo shoot, and we have to be there to safeguard our collections and the buildings themselves, because when you're bringing in all the equipment and you're carrying things, you have to be aware of your surroundings, and we're there to make sure that everything and everyone stays safe.
Yeah. So I would imagine that you have to, if you will, debrief the film crew personnel.
Yes, there's a protocol that they get information on what you can do inside the building, because basically when you walk inside it, you have to think this whole place is a museum. Yeah. So you have to take care. And so there are procedures that they have to follow. and not bringing in food or drink, things like that.
All right. Well, Tina would like to know, palace cooks leave prepared food out for several days. What do they do to keep pests away from the tables when that food is out?
Not much you can do.
I think I've gone in and seen, sometimes they'll have this stuff covered, but I mean, when it's open for the public, they're going to have it out. When the building is closed, they put that away. We do have modern devices like fridges. They'll put that in there, they'll cover it, but flies are always going to come in.
Yes.
And also too, we're not keeping, say, antiques, fragile antiques in a space like that. We're going to have reproductions because it's better for the objects to just, not be exposed to that stuff.
All right. Excellent. Well, we're almost out of time, so let's go to one final question. What is a fun fact about your job that guests to Colonial Williamsburg might not think or know about?
Well, one of them would be the barriers, because you have, behind the barriers, you have antiques sitting on antiques, and you don't want them to harm them. So it's hidden, but in plain sight, or we will use Mylar or Velara foam inserts in between bit things, or if like silver is sitting on a table, we have little pieces of Mylar that protect the surfaces. So it's kind of like hidden in plain sight.
One fun fact is that some of the original buildings we don't actually care for because people live in them. We have a lot of historic area residents that live in some of our historic buildings.
I find that most people are actually more shocked by the fact that we exist. I think a lot of times people don't think about what happens in the buildings before they're open and after they're closed. So just the idea that we have an entire group of people that is there cleaning and taking care of it when they're not there, I think people just don't tend to think about that, and so it usually surprises them.
Well, your dedication certainly helps keep everything running smoothly, so thank you. The Historic Interiors and Collections Care staff in preventive conservation is indeed a skilled and creative group. So thank you, Patrina, Olivia, and Jennifer, for all of your colleagues for sharing your enthusiasm for this very important work. Colonial Williamsburg relies on the generosity of guests and donors like you. This project was funded in part by a generous grant from the National Endowment for the Humanities. We hope you'll join us on Friday, January 28th, to explore the ongoing study of a rare painted overmantel from the Reed Orr House here in Colonial Williamsburg. Experts in painting conservation, historic architecture, painting curation, and paint analysis all collaborate to bring and piece together this story. And remember, when you're considering history, always consider the sources.